Join our team of owners and breeders at Toba today.
I'd like to welcome you to the 2021 Virtual Thoroughbred Owner Conference Series. I'm Gary Falter with the Jockey Club. We're very pleased to have you join us today. This is the third panel in a series of 10 panels that are scheduled for this year. And the first two panels discuss some of the financial aspects of ownership and methods to acquire your racehorses. And today we have a terrific panel that's sponsored by the New York Thoroughbred Breeders to talk about partnerships and racing syndicates. And the panel will last about an hour with Q&A following for about 20 minutes. So if you have a question for any of the panelists, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. I'd like to recognize the host and organizers of the Owner Conference Series, including the Jockey Club and the Thoroughbred Owners and Breeders Association. And I would also like to acknowledge our sponsors, starting with the presenting sponsors, Bessemer Trust, Dean Dorton Equine, Stolkeen and Ogden, and Stone Street Farm. The support of all of our sponsors makes it possible to offer this year's event at no charge to you. Enjoy today's panel, and we look forward to having you back next month when we talk about filling your racing stable through claiming. Our moderator today is former trainer and current TVG analyst, Simon Bray. Thank you, Simon, for joining us. And please take it from here.
Thanks very much, Gary. And what a pleasure it is to be here in this third of 10 panels, as Gary mentioned, on this unique subject, which I think is very important as we move forward in the thoroughbred industry. For somebody who's been involved in horse racing all their life, whether it's owning, training, and now as a broadcaster, I've always been very passionate about getting new people into the sport. And I think today's subject, partnerships and racing syndicates, is a good way to do that. But first, let's introduce our panel. We have a world-class panel here with deep knowledge that we can tap into for the next hour and 15 minutes. I think you're going to really appreciate what they have to say. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Anna Seitz with Fasig Tipton. She has a long background, deep background in the history of thoroughbred racing. Her family is involved in Brookdale Farm, of course, in Versailles, Kentucky. She herself worked for trainer Todd Pletcher after graduating the University of Notre Dame. She's been with Fasig Tipton the last 6 years for client recruitment and investment, and has started up her own all-female partnership. It's all about the girls racing the last several years with tremendous success. So welcome, Anna. We'll talk to you in just a bit. Secondly, Laurie Wolf, who needs no introduction. She, along with her husband, Jack, started Starlight Racing back in 2000, jumped into the thoroughbred scene with immediate success with the likes of Holland's Holiday and Ashados and Shanghai Bobby, just to name a couple. And then she decided to set up her own partnership in 2013, another all-female partnership, Star Ladies Racing, who's also had tremendous success. So we'll check in with Laurie in just a second. All right, Greg, you can see him on the screen there. Greg probably has a better pedigree page than most horses that go through the sale ring. I mean, he's got a family tied with deep ties and roots to the thoroughbred industry, born and raised in Lexington. His great-grandfather, Will, was the groom of the Great Man of War. His grandfather, Tom Harbert, was a prominent horseman, and now he himself has continued that family legacy with Harbert Bloodstock, and he's focused on private purchases, especially in the breeding area, but also managing racing syndicates, and had tremendous success over the last several years. And he's tied to over 16 Grade 1 winners. So, Greg, welcome to the panel. And lastly, Philip Shelton, with TaylorMade, a native of Lexington. He's been with TaylorMade the last several years as a recruitment and investment analyst. And when they decided to head up Medallion Racing, a partnership to introduce new people to the sport with active racehorses rather than going out buying yearlings, Philip was the perfect person to head up that syndicate. They've had a lot of success, especially out here. I'm based in California. We've seen a lot of Beau Recall, Lady Prance a lot, to name a couple. So welcome to the panel, Philip. All right, let's get started. Of course, racing partnerships have been around for a long time, panel. I mean, we've seen partnerships and racing syndicates over the years, you know, at the lower end to the mid-range end to get new people into the sport. But I think we've seen a dramatic shift. I think you'd all agree over the last couple of years, especially the sales ring, independent, big, wealthy owners that usually buy high-priced horses on their own have decided to come together and form syndicates as well. And where they would normally compete in the sales ring, they've come together, joined forces. And I think that's something unique that we've seen over the last couple of years. So let me start with you, Anna. First of all, thanks for being with us. Look, as I mentioned at the top, you're the founder and manager of the partnership called It's All About the Girls Syndicate. Let's talk a bit about that a little bit, because this is a new phenomenon, an all-female partnership. How did you get into that, and when did you start that?
It started about in 2012. I had another syndicate that had males and females, and I noticed we were having a lot of fun. We had a really good horse. Our first horse we ever bought was a multiple graded stakes winner. And I noticed a lot of women were kind of showing up and wanting to go and wanting to be a part and ask me all kinds of questions, and loved horse racing. And obviously working at Fasig-Tipton, I kept hearing this, and traveling overseas, I kept hearing like just women just have a natural affiliation. They're just drawn to horses and horse racing. And I noticed they didn't know how to get into it. You know, it's an intimidating sport. People don't know who to call or how to start. They don't even know where to begin. And so I just decided how fun if we could get a bunch of women together and buy a horse, having no idea that it would take off and we'd still be here doing this all these years later and have horses all over the world. So it was just kind of just a fun thing that was just supposed to be me and a few of my girlfriends that really took off. And it's been awesome because the women, like I said before, their love of the animal, they always put the animal first. They love to have fun. They like to study and learn and ask great questions and come and show up. And so it's been really, I've met some tremendous women that I would never have met if it weren't for our all-female racing partnerships.
All right, let's relive one of those moments, see how fun it was. You recently had a horse called Yes the Dress who won the Jamestown Stakes at Laurel Park in Maryland. Let's take a look back and relive that moment.
And they're into the stretch with a quarter of a mile to go. Yes to the Dress, just hand-ridden. Yes to the Dress, breezing along with a 5-length advantage. Holding fast, trying to hold second, but Wolverette is driving hard to the inside, and in between horses, Wicked Sister. Wicked Sister charging at Wolverette for second, but in the final furlong, it's all Yes to the Dress. Does she like the turf? Yes to the Dress. From Wicked Sister second, and Wolverette holding fast.
Look, the idea of when you get into this as a new owner or managing a partnership like that, just to win a race, the thrill. But explain what it's like to win a race like that, a stakes race. I mean, an easy win, great race call, and then you've got all your partners involved in. It's all about the girls racing. What was that moment like that day?
That was awesome. Just watching that race replay again got my heart going. I hadn't seen it in a while, but that was a special filly because that was the first time we'd ever bought a horse at the Fasig-Tipton Select Saratoga yearling sale, because I never in a million years imagined I'd be able to buy a horse out of that sale. So we bought her as a yearling, then we named her as a group, which I think the name Yes to the Dress was pretty cool name for an all-female syndicate. And then to win that race, I was actually here. I had to be at a horse sale at Fasig-Tipton, but a bunch of the partners were there and they got to be in the winner's circle. They got interviewed afterwards. And I was just so proud. The breeder, she bred her with her husband. She was there with all the women together. And I just remember thinking, this is what it's all about. All of these women coming together, having a fun day at the races and just kind of lifting them up to show them you can do this too, you know? So it was a really special day, and she was an awesome horse, a beautiful filly, and just watching that just brought back a lot of great memories.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, look, winning races domestically, I mean, if that's not hard enough, you decided to branch out and go globally. You went, I mean, not just to Europe, you went down to the Southern Hemisphere, started up a partnership there. Global Glamour, of course, won some great stakes races down there. A very good horse that you had in Australia. Tell us about the evolution of the global partnership and why you invested in Australia and how the pandemic has affected your business over the last 18 months or so.
I was in Australia for the Magic Millions horse sale, and because I go down there for Fasig-Tipton, and I ran into one of my girlfriends who lives in Ireland named Legs Lawler. Her real name's Elaine, but everyone calls her Legs. And I was telling her, we started this all-female syndicate in the States. We should do this down here in Australia because she lives half in Australia, half in Ireland. She splits her time. And so they had, at the time, Magic Millions had this bonus where if you buy a horse, they still have it. You run for a huge bonus in a series of races the next year. So it kind of just happened very organically that we decided to buy a horse, and we hired our good friend and bloodstock agent, James Bester, who works for Coolmore and all these huge outfits. But he said, I'm going to work for these ladies. This will be a lot of fun. So we kept getting outbid. I'll never forget it. We kept getting outbid. And I was like, we're never going to have a horse. And we finally bought this little filly, and it ended up being global glamour. We ended up getting 40 women from 7 different countries. And she won 2 Group 1s, and it was 2 Group 1s in 7 days, which was absolutely wild. And it was, talk about fun. She took us like just to bring women all over the world together. And I couldn't actually be there for her 2 Group 1 wins, but I'd go back down for some of her other stakes wins. And it was so much fun. I met women that, like I said before, I would never met women from these different countries. And it was cool to be able to come together. The hardest part, as you know, having horses in Australia, they run in the middle of the night. I would say that's the most difficult. And when you win a Group 1, you're not very quiet. So I woke up my whole family and my little kids. I was screaming, and everyone was like, what is wrong? And so it was a pretty cool experience. And, you know, unfortunately, we have horses also in Ireland and France. And because of the pandemic, we haven't been able to do any international travel. So 2 years ago, we were able to go to France. We were able to go to the races, have great shopping in Paris, have nice cocktail parties. But then everything shut down. So it became, you know, Zoom meetings every time our horses would run. And I felt like big part of my mission of these syndicates and my partners is to have fun and have parties and have get-togethers, have parties at the barn, have walkovers, that's a big part of what we do. And all of that stopped. And I felt like that was just put a real damper on our syndicate, because the most fun is getting together with your girlfriends and, you know, celebrating. So I'm looking forward to being able to get together with the women soon and hopefully start international travel again and get to see some of these great ladies here soon.
I think it's great. Go ahead, Laura.
We shared a horse with It's All About the Girls, and I just wanted to say that the Zooms were still a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, they were. A lot of champagne early in the morning.
We didn't mind still celebrating.
Yeah, I think it's a great point you both bring up. It's not just about showing up at the race and watching the horse. There's a couple of days before. You're making it an event, right? I mean, from start to finish, from the day you get there to even if the horse doesn't run well, you're still going to have fun and cherish your friendships. Yeah, which is a good lead into my next question. I'm going to pose it to both Anna and Laurie here. I mean, I think over the last several years, and you're the prime example of it, both of you, we've seen an increase in all women partnerships. What do you think the reason for that is? I'll start with Laurie first.
I just think, in my experience, women had a lot of questions. They wanted to learn more about the industry. They wanted to get together. And I think it's not just the women, it's the men too. People want to experience events. And the more women you're around, they're telling their girlfriends, we're getting together, you know, and having these experiences. And I think, you know, there are lots of women that love this industry, and they want to learn about it as much as they possibly can.
Anna, what do you think to that? I mean, I look at it as, you know, we promote the Kentucky Derby. It's hats, it's dressing up, it's parties, but you know, that's for one day out of the year, and unfortunately, it doesn't bleed over into the rest of the races a lot of times. And you know, I think and I think that's a niche where you've kind of taken that model and then expanded it to with your partnerships across the calendar year.
Right. Well, yeah, the women say, I want friends to go to the races with, but I don't know anybody. I go up to Saratoga for the weekend. Who should I go with? And so now they're like, oh, I met that fun lady at that party that we had down at Gulfstream, and maybe we can meet up together. And also another thing I've noticed, the women, they're not as bothered about what percentage they own. If they own 5% of a horse or 50% or 75%, they have just as much fun together. They just enjoy meeting up. And to me, I love seeing these women networking together. Like Laurie and I, we do a lot of business together. I've known Laurie since she had a Shadow because I was working for Todd Pletcher, and here we are partnering on horses. And I get to talk to her about her sales horses when they come to Basic-Tipton. So to me, to see these women networking and working together, and it's not just about dressing up, but you know, a lot of these women, they're really, excuse my mouth, they're pretty badass ladies that have a lot of cool. I've learned from them. I found my own mentors. They're very successful in their own businesses. They run these major companies. So for me, I learn from them, and in the return, I hope I can teach them. You know, like Laurie said, they have a lot of questions, and we try and teach them, educate them, make them feel welcome. This industry, for some reason, it can be insular and people feel left out. And I don't think it's just about making women feel included, but we need to make everyone feel included. And I think that our syndicates try to help at least bridge that gap, that, you know, anyone's welcome in this industry, and we love to have new owners and hope to have a fun time.
Lori, do you think we as an industry do enough in promoting the sport, whether it's for, you know, syndicates or all female syndicates? Is there enough of that?
No, I think we could do a lot better, because so many of our friends, and Lori can answer too, just say, how do I get it? Who do I call? I mean, I meet people on airplanes and hotels, I know, at bars and restaurants, and always ask me, what do you do? And how do I do that? I've always wanted to own a horse, but I have no idea. How do I get to do that? So maybe I know this owner view obviously is a great thing, but maybe we could just continue to do more marketing. And this panel is tremendous because it's doing all of that. And these people, I feel like everyone's trying here. We just maybe need to do a little more. What about you, Lori? What do you think?
I agree with everything you said. I was just going to take it to, I just had another idea. I'm like, how about we do our own sort of magic million that pushes, although it does push women in racing, I just think that would be tremendous to incentivize women to come together as bigger groups. You know, it's fun. I mean, Australia's a ball, man. They get it. They get it with, you know, embracing everybody and having fun. So,
well, I just think to piggyback on that, one thing they do is they make a lot of it easy.
Yep.
You know, in America, I think the bigger problem is a lot of it is just not easy. You know, getting a license in every state is a hurdle. You know, we look at it like even from a partnership perspective, and there's a lot of legal things that you can and cannot do, you know, through the SEC. So it's like these organic owner view things are great because it gives you an opportunity and a platform to do it where you may not be able to do some of that stuff on your own. And it's a really interesting thing, but Australia is probably the best because they've just embraced the model and they said, how can we make it easier to get people involved? What can the industry as a whole and the government and everything, what can they do to make it easier?
Yeah.
And that's really where America's struggled. And no matter what side you fall on with the legislation, everyone could agree that we have to make ownership easier to get involved in. And partnerships are one way to do that. There's still a lot of hurdles within partnerships, but the ease of bringing new people in, you know, like I'm sure you guys are the same, but for us, like, I just want you to say yes. And then I want to help you
with the hurdles,
take care of we'll do the rest. You say yes, you want to be involved and that's it. But that is a major hurdle in the US that you definitely don't have in Australia.
I would agree with that. I think we're very good at making things extremely difficult and hard in this country as far as our sport goes. All right, hold that thought, Anna. We'll get back to you. Appreciate your insight. We want to switch over to Lori, focusing on her partnership a little bit. And one of the best examples of partnerships and big partnerships coming together was last year's Kentucky Derby, and how authentic got to the wire first here. Starlight Racing were part of the partners. Let's relive this moment. I think, Laurie, you're going to enjoy this.
And they're into the stretch, and it's Tis the Law on the outside of Authentic. These two stride for stride as they come to the final furlong. Authentic is digging in. Tis the Law all out to get by him. Authentic and John Velasquez have the lead as they come down to the 16th pole. Tis the Law still trying to get him. Authentic, Tis the Law, here's the wire. Authentic has won the Kentucky Derby. John Velasquez does it with Authentic. Tis the Law has to settle for second. And then it was Mr. Big News. Honor AP ends up fourth. 2 minutes, 0.61 seconds was the final time for Authentic. Bob Baffert has done it for the 6th time.
Oh my gosh. Do we see so many Avengers there?
Yes, a new event. Look. I think if people are watching this and they're new to the sport, they would think, I don't think I could ever get into a situation where I could own a Kentucky Derby. If you're a realist, you know, it's sport of the king, big owners, long-time owner breeders, it's only for them. But I think this bust the doors open and broke that theory, because this horse, had so many partners in and partnerships. Talk about the evolution of that partnership and how you got to the Kentucky Derby.
So, you know, when Charlie started in this business 20 years ago, you know, it was to buy the best horse that we possibly could with as much pedigree as we could get into a horse. As you know, the way that we have found is like to spread the risk. Back in 2018, I believe we started up and joined with SF Bloodstock. And what a great group. We all share the same ideals and what we're looking for. We go in, we buy the yearling, and we train them. They all go, they train at they break at Eddie Woods. They go out to Stafford on the West Coast. And from there, I mean, this horse was he broke down every sort of barrier, even backwards with the whole pandemic, turned everything in racing upside down. Here he is, he gets purchased breeding rights and racing rights from Mr. Hughes at Spendthrift Farm to stand as a stallion there after his racing career. And then Mr. Hughes sells a piece of that to my racehorse. So we've started, that horse truly showed the value of syndication all the way through. All different touch points, all different levels of income. And, if you guys, I'm sure you did see some of the commercials for my racehorse after that win.
Yeah.
See all the faces, and we couldn't be at the Derby. Very few of us could be. I happened to be in Saratoga and with my daughter, and we were up there celebrating, screaming, hooting, hollering, playing pool, drinking, celebrating till like 3 a.m. It was amazing. But it shows the power of these syndicates and what they can do.
What are the benefits of it? I mean, obviously, you have very good horses, but if I'm at home and I'm thinking about jumping into one of these syndicates, what's the benefit of doing that rather than going it alone?
The biggest benefit to me is that if you really come into this business and you really don't have any background in it, there are just 10,000 things that are going on. Unless you've got somebody that's in your family or a good friend that has been down this road, it's very helpful, because what we believe in are our partners have been very successful in their own right. They still have their businesses they run. We help take care of the day-to-day stuff that, paying the bills, making sure the horses are good, getting reports from the trainer. And from there, and we believe in educating our partners as much as they want to learn, we'll give it to them. Our website's very informational. They have, training reports out there for them. We really do try to get all of that information out there to them. And so it's a great educational piece. And then some decide they really don't want to take that next step in doing it on their own. And then some do. And it's just how far you want to take it. And
how could these new owners, prospective owners, learn about the investment models, about how these different syndicates operate? Is it just, doing research and cold calling?
Well, absolutely. I mean, part of the thing is with OwnerView, I mean, you get people like all of us that have been in the business, love this business, think it's the best thing ever, to educate them. And that's the biggest thing. It's educate yourself, ask the questions, do the research, because they're all different types. I mean, with our model, what we do is that we are capitally invested as well. So we're all in the same playing field. We just have more of the management side of it, but we do have our own money invested in it. So, and everybody's a little different. There's a different entry point level for everybody. So you have to decide where you're comfortable. And while you're in there, you'll meet other people. That's the nice thing. Ask those questions. I've not met anybody in this industry that's not happy to talk to you about something and share what we love.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think everyone who's involved in it is passionate. They're willing to share. Has the pandemic affected your partnerships? Look, personally now as a broadcaster, it didn't seem to affect horse racing. I didn't stop work for a whole year. It's a one sport that never stopped from our end. But what about owners? Was there a lack of interest because owners couldn't get to the track, or did it become virtual Zoom parties?
You know what? Honestly, that's really and truly what it began to do. Is that was the one way that we could have the communication, and we have fun and we laugh and we talk. That was a great way for us to communicate and update owners on where we were, where the horses were. I mean, obviously, you see, I was thinking about this the other day. I mean, does Authentic Derby go down with an asterisk by it because of the date?
Right.
So I mean, it kind of threw everybody upside down, but I think everybody just jumped and ran with it and handled it just fine. I hate it. I have to say that I miss seeing the faces. I miss being around the people because I really just adore them. But I'm looking forward, fingers crossed, that we are getting back to normal to see everybody again.
All right. Thanks very much, Lori. Sit tight. We'll get back to you. We've got some questions at the end of the segment. I want to, first of all, before we move on, I just want to thank today's sponsor, the New York Thoroughbred Breeders, for their participation. Without them, none of this is possible. But I want to introduce Greg Harbert now, Talked to him I mentioned him at the top of the segment. I mean, he has a long history, deep history rooted in Lexington and the thoroughbred industry. Greg, you had a great horse last year, Necker Island. He ran in last year's Kentucky Derby. He won 2 of his first 3 starts right at Churchill Downs. Let's take a look back, and you can enjoy this one more time. Necker Island.
It's anyone's race off the turn. Necker Island and Wells. Island down inside. Wells Bayou rather down inside, giving way. Silver State's in behind. Wayno is there. Ollie Wonder down the center of the track, coming with a bold run. Sprawl's got a shot as well. 8th pole. Here's Silver State in between. Ollie Wonder outside. Necker Island's very game toward the rail. These 300 yards out. Silver State short lead. Necker Island fights on. Necker Island and Silver State photo. Big effort from Necker Island to photo with Silver State. Ollie Wonder was 3rd and Sprawl was 4th.
Great performance by Necker Island, and he earned a spot into the Kentucky Derby last year. Let's talk about that experience. I mean, you started up your business. It's a relatively new business, young guy, continuing the family legacy. What was it like to have a horse run in the Kentucky Derby?
An amazing experience, and I hope that everyone gets that experience. I work in the business, but first and foremost, I am a fan of the industry and the game. If you ask anyone who has any involvement, whether you be a breeder, trainer, jockey, or an owner, what's one race they want to be able to compete in, I think it's a unanimous decision of the Kentucky Derby. And with me having a rich family tradition in the business, my grandfather actually owned a horse that he bred and co-owned. That ran in the 1962 Kentucky Derby. For me, it was a very surreal moment. It was a bit different last year because of COVID. It wasn't ran in a traditional manner the first Saturday in May. There weren't spectators there at the race tradition like in years past and like this year. But once we all assembled and we gathered for the walkover and things of that nature, it was very sentimental. It was very unreal. And even though we didn't have the spectators, like I mentioned, it still felt like a derby. It was a great run that Necker Island took myself as well as the other 2 partners, Ray Daniels and Wayne Sharon. I think that experience created a lot of information and shed a lot of light on the African-American contributions to horse racing and the Kentucky Derby. And, since then, there's been a lot of talk and discussion from minority owners wanting to come in because of our participation last year with Necker Island last year's Kentucky Derby. So just a win-win situation all around.
Yeah, we touched on your family history quite a lot here. Your great grandfather Will Hobart was the groom of Man of War. Your grandfather Tom, he was a stallion man, right, at Spendthrift, is that right? And he was a prominent horseman. How did those 2 people in your life, influence what you do now, and kind of some of the thought processes that you put into your work going forward?
Well, obviously, my foundation. I stand on both of their shoulders. I think I received the love of love of horses and developed a love of horsemanship due to both of them. I was obviously very much closer to my grandfather. I actually spent a great deal of time with him, taught me a lot about horsemanship, about the business, what to look for in horses, and, just a man of great wealth and knowledge of the overall industry. So, I'm immensely, indebted to be able to have those years with him and just learn from a great horseman.
Let's talk about Living the Dream, because you've got Hobart Bloodstock, that's your bloodstock agency. Living the Dream is your racing syndicate that you manage. I'm going to ask you a similar question I just asked Lori about how to research the investment opportunities and the models of these various syndicates. How would you answer that question?
Oh, well, like Lori mentioned, we all share the same common goal of wanting people to come into the business, but there's different methods to come in. We come in at a little different approach. We sort of come in and we claim horses sort of on the higher end, but not necessarily purchasing yearlings. That was the way we came into ownership of Necker Island. We sort of did a non-traditional route of claiming him. He was a $100,000 claim, so he's much higher than the norm. But that's sort of our niche, where we look for horses that we can sort of turn around and get them going again to turn them into allowance horses or stakes horses again. But the industry is very welcoming and accommodating. If you have interest, I'm sure anyone on this panel or other syndicates that are out there would be happy to answer any of your questions. Programs like today to be able to inform owners, and other racetracks have new owners day where you can come out and learn about the industry, take behind the scenes tours. Just reaching out and taking the first step of reaching out and showing up and participating is the best way to get involved.
And then lastly, look, I think one of the questions that's asked more than anything is how do you get new owners into the sport? I think now, with the age of social media, there's so much more direct access and email blasts and conferences like this. How do you recruit new owners, Greg, going forward to sustain our industry? Because the owners are the backbone of the industry. No owner, we don't have horse racing. And in particular, you brought it up earlier, and I think very importantly, maybe more importantly, is how do we attract minority owners into the sport of horse racing?
Well, that's something Living the Dream is strategically working on and with others to partner on. I've been on calls before with Anna, we've discussed this very similar thing, but, just having events at racetracks to create awareness, to educate people, having things at sales, strategic marketing, representation matters. When people can look on a national race like the Kentucky Derby, see minority representation, see someone that looks like them, that's paramount. Churchill Downs did a great event last Tuesday, where they had a unity rally, and they really told the story of some noted African-American horsemen, trainers, and things of that nature. And anytime someone can look on TV and see something that resembles them, that sparks a lot of interest. And, because of the things that have happened, we're seeing that, and, partnering with, things that are going on like right now, teleconference and other individuals is a big key to that movement.
Yeah, and you've seen an uptick in minorities getting into horse racing through your partnership.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm constantly getting emails, phone calls every day, and people, they want to be a part of this. This is a great sport. This is a great industry. I've not had one person that I've taken to the racetrack that has not said, I've had a bad day and how do I get involved? So once you can just get individuals to the racetrack, our job is very easy. The actual sport itself sells itself. So absolutely, it's been a huge thrill for me to see people, non-traditional fans come into this, non-traditional owners that want to be a part of this and tell their friends about it, and just see how this thing has initially grown from our first investment was a $16,000 claimer that we turned around, won some allowance races, actually greatest takes place, ultimately ended up selling her via Phasic Tippett, and through Phil Shelton's company he works for, Taylor Made. So to see that infancy from where we started to where this thing is going has just been it's been a thrill.
Well, that's great, and appreciate your insights. Sit tight, Greg. Last but not least, he's the most patient person on the panel. He's been waiting. Phil Shelton, we'll introduce him again. He runs Medallion Racing, works for Taylor Made Farms as well. And over the last couple of years, it's a relatively new partnership. Medallion Racing had tremendous success. Lady Prancelot and Beau Recall, I think one of the headliners is. Let's relive for a moment the Distaff Turf Mile at Churchill Downs.
And they're into the stretch, and it's Newspaper of Record in front. Juliet Foxtrot and La Signare trying to run her down with 3/16 of a mile to run. Newspaper of Record, something left in the tank here, a furlong out. Beau Recall has kicked it in, and here she comes on the outside. Beau Recall up alongside of Newspaper of Record, and right on by. Beau Recall and Manny Franco by 2 on the wire. Newspaper of Record was second, La Signare was third, and then Juliet Foxtrot in 1:35.39.
Never gets old. Never gets old watching that, does it, Philip?
No, and it's funny. She actually won the race the year before, and again, like everybody's talked about, with fans, this unbelievable experience, and then, she won last year. With no fans, but yeah, she beat some great horses. Juliet Foxtrot, Newspaper of Record. She was just awesome. Just a filly that tried her heart out every time. I think my wife, I don't know how much my wife really loved horse racing, but Beau Recall was the horse that just, now she's really invested. Maybe too much so, because now I'm like, I don't need the questions when I get home. You got to just be the support. But it's she really just, she was a filly that laid it out for us from the time she was a 3-year-old till she was a 6-year-old. She danced every dance, and just couldn't ask any more of a horse than what she did, and just unbelievable. She's actually at Taylor Made now. Larry Best bought her when we sold her at auction, so it's I still get to go see her every now and then, which is a lot of fun.
Oh, that's tremendous. And she had the running style that would make new owners attractive to new owners, coming from off the pace and the thrilling finishes. All right, Medallion Racing. That's your partnership that you set up, or you tailor-made and you set up, and you were picked out to run just several years ago, back in 2016. So it's a relatively new partnership. How did that whole thing get started?
I think what we looked at is traditionally our core customer base are commercial breeders, right? It's a lot of guys buying mares, selling yearlings, not really involved in racing. Well, when we bought California Chrome, a bunch of our guys who would take stallion shares, et cetera, they got into a stallion share in Chrome, which counted as racing rights. Well, then they went and won the Dubai World Cup, ran second the Breeders' Cup, but kind of set a standard of which, and we only buy fillies now, so it's definitely unattainable. And then we kind of piggybacked on that and bought into Catherine Sophia right before she won the Kentucky Oaks with a lot of the same partners. And it just showed us that there is a big opportunity for people that want to be involved at a really high level, but they don't want to pay the full price, right? They don't want to go out and do it on their own and be out $1 million plus. So how is there an opportunity for us to either leverage our connections at TaylorMade to do that? And that was kind of the genesis of TaylorMade, which, let us focus on fillies, which, like Lori and Greg and everybody said, it's really important for everybody to figure out, like, what is the pricing model? What is the experience that's going to be delivered? Because what I would tell you is Medallion's not the right fit for everybody. If your whole dream in racing is to win the Derby, that's just not going to happen with Medallion. If your dream is to go run in a bunch of grade ones, control your downside risk because it's fillies, give yourself the upside and have a great experience, we're a great fit. And I think it's really important for everybody to figure out what is the experience that you're seeking, and then what is the partnership that's the right fit for you. And we just figured out there was a demand for the kind of product that we wanted to offer, and it was different than what other people were doing. And that was kind of the genesis of it but it was really piggybacked. Like if we never bought California Chrome as a stallion, I have no idea if we ever would have had Medallion, but it just opened our eyes to, hey, if you can do something at a really high level, there is a demand, even within our current customer base that traditionally doesn't want to race horses. And it's kind of evolved and grown the last 5 years since then, but that was the start.
And you kind of answered my next question. It was, you're exclusively buying fillies, and that's just to eliminate the risk a little bit, right? So you have a little bit of resale value at the end of the career.
Yeah. Maybe? Yeah. So, for us, we can go in and buy proven fillies. So there's already a residual. If this horse got hurt, you're getting some of your money back. And the reality is injuries happen, or horses lose form, but there's some sort of locked in value, and then hopefully some go on. So it just controls the downside and hopefully leaves us plenty of upside. And what it can do is it can guarantee the experience. Like Starlight has a great track record. But when you buy a yearling, it's hard, like some of them. Now the thrills that when you go buy an authentic, the thrill of that is unmatched when he goes on and wins all the races. But it's just a different model. There's way more blue sky and way more home run upside. Like what we do is we take away a lot of the strikeouts, but we take away a lot of the home runs too, and we play for singles and doubles. But what we like to say is if you're single and doubles running in a bunch of grade ones, that can feel like a home run.
Yeah, it's smart philosophy. I like the business approach. Let's talk about, so someone comes into Medallion Racing, right? They want to get involved. Let's go through the life cycle of a horse in your partnership. Like, how do you feel you're stable? Where do you get? Are you going to public auction, buying yearlings? Are you claiming private purchases with proven horses? You buy them, they race, and then what happens ultimately at the end? Because say I want to jump in, I want to own this filly mare. She's won grade one races. At the end of it, I'm attached to her. It's a partnership. I guess it's decision by majority. Do they all go to the sale and then we start over again?
Yeah. So what I would say is we look at any opportunity. Predominantly it's private purchases, not all. We have bought horses at public auction if we felt like, the price was right or it was the right opportunity. A lot of times and there's a little shift now. There's more horses of racing age sales, but traditionally it's just November or July. And a lot of the biggest filly mares are not in July. So for us, November is kind of the one time, and we will buy out of November. We bought a filly named Midnight Crossing who won a grade 3 out at Santa Anita. We made some money on her. We bought her out of a sale, but predominantly it's private purchases because for us, we want to go buy a horse and then 3 weeks later they're in a graded stake. You know, we bought Going to Vegas earlier this year. She ran in a grade 2, a month later, and she ran 4th, but then she came back 5 weeks later and won a grade 3. She's going to run in the Gamely. So for us, it's that immediate action. So private purchases just make the most sense, but we're not opposed to buying at a public auction. It's just where is the right opportunity.
And then at the end, like you said,
so everything sells. So traditionally it's a 2-year cycle. You know, what we don't want to do is we don't want to feel forced to sell at the end of a year. Like if one horse had an injury and was laid off, it's coming back. Or, you know, hey, like this year we kept Horologist. She's going to run in the Allaire de Pont on Black Eyed Susan Day. We held her over an additional year because we think, hey, she can win a grade 1. She's a Breeders' Cup type horse. Hopefully, and we keep our fingers crossed that she stays in form like that the whole year. But yeah, so everything will eventually sell. Part of that is the partnership with TaylorMade. It allows us to do a pricing model that's probably a lot different than what other people do. But it's a bonus for both TaylorMade and Medallion because TaylorMade will sell everything at the end of the day. And what I would tell everybody is, hey, if you really get attached to a horse, there's nothing stopping you from buying out the partnership at the end. I mean, that's certainly an option. Most of our investors, they're not to that level. It's a lot of people who are newer to horse ownership. What I would say is at the beginning, it was core TaylorMade customers. Those people have phased out because what they found is that's really not what they want. They did it with Chrome and it was really cool, but he had the stallion side at the end of the day and everything else. They don't want to be traveling to the races. They don't want to be, again, to piggyback on what everyone else has said, they don't want to be going to the events. You know, that's not what excites them. And what I would tell you is they're not the right fit for us. Like if you don't want to do that stuff, because I think what everyone will tell you and in the financial panel is if you're doing it purely for financial gain, there are way better investments. So there has to be some sort of added value that you're getting. And what I would say for us is that we're giving you this experience, right? Like 25% of our races are in grade 1s. That's 160 starts over 4 years. So we're giving you this experience at a really high level that if you wanted to do that on your own, if you wanted to run in 10 or 11 grade 1s a year, it would cost you millions of dollars. So we're bringing you that experience for a much lower price point. And what I would say is the same, right? If you want to have a Kentucky Derby winner, Sheikh Muhammad's done so many great things for the business, but he's poured tons and tons of money. He doesn't have one, you can get involved with Starlight and for a way lower price point, and they have a Derby winner. And I mean, they've had, again, 2-year-old champions, all sorts of great things. So it's just a different way to get involved. And I think for a lot of people, it's just more palatable. Like I wish people would call me saying, hey, I've got a $10 million budget. I want to win the Derby, but those people are few and far between. And that's just not a realistic sum. You look at Medina Spirit, he was $1,000 yearling, a $35,000 2-year-old. They come from anywhere. So it's just such a tough task.
Appreciate it, Phil. Thanks. I mean, we've heard some great insights there, and I think you touched on it at the end there. The difference and the differences between the partnerships, whether it's just buying fillies, whether it's all ladies in the case of Laurie and Anna, and then Greg with his partners as well. So now I'm going to kind of go around the horn a little bit and open up the questions to everyone here, call everyone. Obviously, with partnerships, there's a lot of people, and that involves a lot of communication. Anna, I'll go back to you. How do you start with communication? How do you deal with communication on a daily basis? How often? How frequent?
All of our partnerships are a little different because we kind of build each horse we buy. Each horse is kind of different unless it's the overseas horses. So we're actually pin hooking a horse in the Maryland sale, and we've got some horses where people can buy into breed. So ours are kind of a little different because we try to cater to whatever it is that our partners want to do. So we email anytime we get any kind of communication from our trainer. If say one of our partners is doing something really cool herself, or she has a horse in another stake, or she's doing something really successful, we'll try to update them on that. We have all the different social media accounts. So it's all just depends on what's happening on track. And it's a little harder when you buy a baby and it takes them a long time to get ready, because there's not a lot of updates to be sent. But we actually went to Webb Carroll Training Center this year, and we Zoomed from there, and we showed everybody their horses and had a nice dinner. So that was fun. And obviously a lot of, like someone else said, the horses get hurt. So again, more downtime. So it's always, you get more communication when there's action. And so like I said before, I'm looking forward to seeing everyone again and having more in-person communication rather than just on the computer.
Greg, I would imagine it's a lot easier now with all the tools available. Look, I was training 20 years ago, and it was fax machines, and you couldn't send a video of a horse working. I'm friends with several trainers, and they can, with the minute the horse has worked in the morning, the owner's got the instant video. Is that how you operate?
Absolutely. We try to align ourselves specifically with trainers that sort of buy into that model. Some trainers, as you know, are from an old school orthodox standpoint, they don't really enjoy that. But we find our partners really enjoy seeing the workouts, seeing pictures of the horse. About once or twice a month, we actually try to do an interview with the trainer, where you can sort of hear it from the horse's mouth what's going on, things of that nature. And like some others, we send out workout reports and things of that nature. But even though you not necessarily own the whole horse, we try to keep you as informed and up to date as if you actually own the whole horse from that standpoint of communication and transparency.
Laurie, what about your group? How often do you communicate? How do you have a dedicated person to take care of it? Obviously.
It's a little bit of everything that everybody said. I mean, yeah, we have a young man by the name of Corbin Blumberg that we've just hired as our racing manager. And Corbin's the guy that sends out tweets to everybody to update them if there's been a work on a horse, an upcoming race. We try to drive everybody to our website, because that way they can look at the calendar and see what's coming up. They get to see the current pictures, the current videos of the horses. And honestly, all three, Jack, Corbin, myself, I mean, they have our cell numbers, and we answer the calls directly if they have them. Like Greg said, we try to get Zoom calls with the owners that we can get. Our major trainers, we have Todd Putcher that'll answer questions right from the horse's mouth. Bob will come on and talk to him, Rudolph. So, I mean, it's nice that our owners are in these calls. It's a social thing, but they're not afraid to ask the questions. And, we've gotten a lot of positive feedback about that they know that they can talk to them. They don't feel uncomfortable about doing any of that. So it's a lot of the same thing.
What about you, Philip? Your ownership group, you deal with a lot of new people getting into the sport. So I would imagine the communication level probably increases quite a bit, because you're educating probably a lot more than you are somebody who's been established in the business 5-10 years.
Yeah. And what I would say is we have some guys that are have been involved or more from a handicapping perspective. So they have some horse racing knowledge, but it's not ownership level or it's just more casual fans. Yeah. I think the biggest thing is just, you don't want to overflow with information. We try to provide a very base level every week. You get a report on every horse. This is what they're doing. Just to reiterate, some of the trainers are a lot better than others. And some it's like, you feel like you have to go through a tense interrogation to pull out how was the last work and where you are. But, a lot of them are great. I think that's the biggest thing is you just want it to be transparent, because at the end of the day, when you're talking about racehorses, they have to run. And if a trainer's telling me, hey, this thing is awesome, it's outworked every horse, and they goes and runs dead last 3 times in a row, there's a disconnect, right? Their horse, something is going, and maybe the horse is outworking everything, but that's the last thing that I want to hear. I tell all of our trainers, I'm like, just be as honest with me as possible, because that's a learning experience too, right? Every horse we buy is not a winner. We've bought horses and said, hey, it's just not working. We paid 150. We got to drop her in for 30 and just move on. I mean, that's a part of the business. Right. Conversely, it's the other way, right? We're like, hey, we're going really good. There's a G2 at Belmont. Do we want to ship across the country, or do we want to wait for the G1 and come off of a 10-week layoff or whatever it is? So it's a very transparent thing. And I think the industry in general needs as much transparency as it can possibly get. And that's what I try to do, is just be as transparent and lay it all out there, and then encourage questions, because I think, to reiterate what everybody's saying, is we're all passionate. We're all fans first. I mean, I grew up just as my dad took me to the races and taught me how to gamble. And that's it. That's like my affiliation to racing. So it's, we're all passionate. We all want to help him. We want this game to be better 5 years from now than it is today. And how can we, make that happen, I think, is the biggest thing.
All right, next question. I think I'm going to start with Laurie, because this applies to you more than anything else. I touched on it, and we've touched on it, about how competing partnerships have now come together. Spendthrift probably 15 years ago might have been bidding against Starlight in the ring, right? Now they come together, they win a Kentucky Derby together. It's what's taken that so long to happen? Why has it happened? And do you think it's going to continue going forward?
I can't tell you why it took so long to happen, because it really does make sense. I mean, you have people, with some of the horses with Starlight, we are partnered up with Stone Street. So to me, it makes sense, because you're spreading your risk around. You're getting more people involved. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's still always a business. So there's a bottom line. So writing $6 million checks and $10 million checks, Sheikh Mohammed and all of those guys, 10, 15 years ago, that's going away. I know the consigners probably aren't as thrilled about it. But I mean, it makes sense. And I love uniting with people. I love getting to know other people in the business that I wouldn't have been able to get to know. I mean, with Star Ladies this year, we partnered up just with Lindsey Burnett, Glen Hill Farm, Mathis Racing. It makes sense to bring more people into it, and you can buy a few more horses than just being a single or a double person, entity going in and buying. And I don't think it's going up anytime soon.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I mean, just from a personal response, I don't think it's going away. I think it's probably going to thrive going forward. Kind of leads into the next question. I'll start with Anna here, because part of that authentic group was the My Racehorse people, and that's something new in of itself. So we've got partnerships coming together, and now we've got micro shares, which is something very unique in the last several years with My Racehorse. Two-part question, I guess. One, is it good for the sport? And two, do you think we'll see more of that going forward?
Absolutely. I think it's great for the sport. I think it makes people feel like I own a racehorse. It doesn't matter that they own one millionth of a racehorse. I can't believe how many people. I think I was leaving a racetrack or something. Yeah, I was leaving the Derby, and the parking attendant was like, "I just won the Kentucky Derby," and I was like, "That's cool." He was just excited about it, as the big owners were. So I do think we're going to see more of it. I know there's a lot of rules and regulations going into it. I'm sure it's a lot of red tape, a lot of things to work through, but it sounds like My Racehorse has it figured out. And I see them in big groups around at the sales. Like Greg was saying, they come to the sales, they come to the races. They're always trying to have parties. Of course, they've had to limit that in the past few months, but I know that's their goal. I think it's great. I'm sure the racetracks are like, how are we going to accommodate all these large groups? But I think it's something we need to figure out and make it, because you never know where that next bigger owner might come from. And if they have a good experience as a smaller owner, then who knows if they're going to invest maybe in one of these other syndicates or eventually go out on their own. So I think it's really great for racing.
Greg, do you think that's something that, going forward in your business, you might have to pivot to and create something like with microshares?
Absolutely. I think not only myself, but all of us, I think that is a trend that's very hot right now. I don't see that dimming out. But, to echo what Anna said, I think it's a great concept. Anytime you can have a huge influx of people coming into this industry, creating a marketing buzz where people are talking about on social media. And as she had just mentioned, that guy who has one micro share, you never know what his experience will entail and what he could be 10 years from now. So anytime you have the availability to reach the masses with this great sport, I think it's a positive.
And Phil, we kind of see that trend with racing clubs as well. You have a few here in America, where I'm from in England, that they're very big, where it's like a partnership, but it's more of a day out at the races as well. You're not so much involved in the training of the horse, but it's more of a day out, a group of people all coming together, kind of like micro shares, big number of ownership groups. I mean, that's a way forward as well. Racing clubs, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at it in the US, the biggest hurdle is just you have SEC restrictions that
Yes.
you can't do, and it's a pretty substantial financial outlay from a just a legal perspective. I give my racehorse a ton of credit. What they did was, you know, I don't when it comes to the farms, a lot of the farms themselves just were never going to be willing to take such a substantial leap of faith that's so far outside of their core business. And these guys came out from a business perspective and said, hey, how could we get all these people that are at the track? If you told them they could own a horse for $100, it seemed like it made a lot of sense to them. And they just had the business experience and acumen to pull it off. I think as that cost comes down and it becomes a little bit more, I mean, I'll give my racehorse a lot of credit. I own a share of Monomoy Girl. I bought a bunch for my older relatives who just don't do with COVID, haven't done anything. So we could just watch it together and all cheer for Monomoy Girl to win. So it's great, but it's a very hard thing. And I think they even had issues. There was a change in president. And so there's a new leadership at the SEC and it's a lag time. So there's a lot of red tape, I would say. And I think that's the biggest thing. If that changes and it becomes easier, I think a lot of people will do it because it's a way and there's a captive audience, right? The amount of people that watch racing and go to the races that could put up $1,000 into micro shares is significantly higher than somebody that can come put up $100,000 or $50,000 or whatever the number is to get into a partnership. So there's a captive audience. And I think what's going to happen, and you've seen it with Spendthrift partnering with my racehorse pretty significantly, but their brand is just going to get bigger. And I think that kind of lifts everybody a little bit.
And
I think it is.
I want to add hats off to Mr. Hughes. He has been a gentleman that came into this business and has been an outlier in his thinking and has just really turned the business around in some ways. He is a very forward-thinking man.
Yeah, and he's not a gentleman that needed a partner. He's doing it for the sake of the industry and getting new people. And he doesn't need to do that. And I think that's the way forward. And personally, I like, I know from my experience, they have their own app, My Racehorse. You could buy a share right there on the app. I mean, I'm sitting at home ordering food. I can get an Uber. I can buy, that's selling me legs of empty private jets all through a cell phone. And finally, I think that's the way. At some point going forward, you might be able to just click on your phone and say, I want a piece of this, a piece of that for $50, $100. So I look forward to that. All right.
The key to all of it is just scale. What they had was they had this real business that had all, the seed money where they're burning money trying to get people. And the reality is they're in a very unique position. Most other partnerships just aren't there because economically it's just too tough. And they really came at it from like a startup business, like private equity almost. And again, hats off to them. They've done a great job. The app's great. It's easy to use. And there's a lot of positives, I think, to what they've done.
All right, this is a good question to end as far as direct questions. Then we'll open it up to the Q&A. Collectively, as owners and managing partners, how do you look at thoroughbred aftercare? I think it's a topic that has come to the forefront the last several years. I don't think it's had enough focus. They had full disclosure. I'm on the TAA board, so I have a vested interest in thoroughbred aftercare. Let's start with Laurie. What do you do with thoroughbred aftercare? I mean, some new owner comes in, they have fun at the races, then the horse's career ends, whether it's by retirement, injury, or just a decision. What do you do from that point on?
Well, hopefully it's not an injury that, is career ending. I mean,
sure.
When it comes to the end of, normally they'll go through a public auction and they'll be sold, or they'll be sold privately as a stallion prospect. But as far as injury goes, my husband, Jack, was instrumental in getting the TAA up and running years ago. We're very close with Anna Ford at New Vocations. I think it's the right thing to do because just because these horses can't go around in these circles or they don't have the heart or the speed to be great racehorses doesn't mean they're not going to be a great hunter jumper or eventer or dressage horse or somebody's best friend in their barn. For example, this summer when we were up in Saratoga and there was nothing that we could do, my daughter and son, I took them every day. We went out to North Country Horses. That's sort of the northern outpost for New Vocations. And so my son decided that he wanted to finally learn how to ride. And my daughter we had actually one of our horses from Pletcher's barn that had to be retired. And they were retraining, and she got on him and worked on him, trying to get him rehome for his next place. And Jake had a great time learning how to ride a reining horse. So there's all kinds of things out there for these horses to do. It's not just running at the tracks.
Greg, same question for you. Thoroughbred advocate, how do you approach that?
I mean, I think it's very important. You know, these horses give so much to us. I think it's our time to give back. You know, we should. You know, with us, a lot of our horses are liquidated either at public auction or through the claiming ranks. We make a point if the horse is claimed off of us to let the new owner know that that horse will always have a home with us should it not pan out with them. We set aside a certain portion of our race proceeds to be able to help certain charities and endeavors. And I just think it's paramount that we give back as the horse gives so much to us.
Anna, same question to you.
Simon, I want to thank you for asking this question because I think it is so important to be brought up. I think getting new people in the game is a big deal, but also making sure these horses are well looked after at the end is extremely important. And we kind of like brag, if sometimes we'll have horses that have to be dropped in for claiming prices, and we follow those horses. We always try to reach out to the new owners or trainers. And if they get to a level where we think that they might not be, shouldn't be running, we try to get them back and claim, buy them back or get them donated back. And then because of my women's network now, a lot of women want to have retired racehorses. And so we had 2 horses recently who had minor racetrack injuries where they couldn't continue to race, but they were able to we gave them to some ladies, and now they send us videos of them in their second careers. And it makes me just really happy every time I get an update, because then I can share it with my women partners and say, look at this horse, she's thriving, she's in a good home, this woman absolutely loves her. So we try, and I'm on the TCA board, and like Lori said, I do a lot with New Vocation. So there's so many ways people can get involved in aftercare now because of all the different organizations. So if that's something you're passionate about and you're watching this panel, reach out to one of those organizations. They're always looking for volunteers or donors, or there's lots of ways to help out. So I really appreciate you bringing up this topic.
Yeah, I can attest to that myself. And finally, Phil, you kind of answered this question, I guess, because you invest only in fillies and said they basically go through the sale at the end of their career, right?
Yeah, but I mean, again, just to reiterate, I think at the beginning you said, without owners, there's no business. Well, without horses, there's no business either. And it's
Yep.
equally important. Like I know TaylorMade, it's now pretty industry standard, but we donate a percentage of every of our commission of every horse we sell at public auction. We also donate to the TAA. We actually just did a big handicapping event pre-Derby with Jonathan Kinchin, Pete Fornatel on Wednesday last week. And, a percentage of every ticket that we sold went to the TRF. We also made a donation. So I think it's just really important. What I would say is that we've made a lot of strides the last 5 or 6 years. I think 5 or 6 years ago was like, just this thing that nobody talked about, even though it was a huge problem. And we still have a long way to go. We're not there yet, but I think the more attention we bring to it, it is important, because I do even have people in our ownership group that say, hey, what is this horse doing now? And a lot of times it's like, I just got to figure out who bought her, call them, try to get some videos of their foals or something. But I think it is important that everybody just realizes, like, the horse is the most important thing in the business. They give you everything. Without them, there's no wins, there's no events. Like, everything revolves around the horse. And I think if you put the horse first, that's when you have the best experience.
100% agree with that. Yeah, I mean, the horse, you put him in the front of the picture, or her at the front of the picture, and the rest takes care of itself. All right, sit tight. That's it for our panel discussion. We're going to open up to Q&A. So hopefully, if you're out there watching and listening, you've been sending in some questions. It's at the bottom of your screen. But before we get to the Q&A, we want to thank our sponsor, Blood Horse. Take a look at this while we sort through the questions.
There's no better way to follow thoroughbred racing, breeding, industry news, and more than with Blood Horse. Blood Horse Magazine, the industry's premier monthly magazine and tablet, with feature stories, in-depth profiles and analysis, award-winning photojournalism, and the industry's top writers. And the new Blood Horse Plus, available through bloodhorse.com, with weekly multimedia interactive shows, behind-the-scenes videos, daily stakes winners section, monthly equine line credits, and more. Covering thoroughbred racing, breeding, and our sport for more than 100 years. Blood Horse.
All right, thank you to the Blood Horse once again. Okay, Gary has been doing the diligent work of sorting through the questions that so many of you submitted. There were a ton coming in, so we'll turn it over to Gary for the panel Q&A. Gary?
Okay, yeah, thanks, Simon. Yeah, we have a bunch of good questions, so I'm going to start off with the first question is, do fractional owners have a choice of horses, and do they have any input when the horses race? So who would like to take that first question? Do fractional owners have a choice of what horses they invest in?
So I don't want to speak for everyone's partnership. I'll let them go. What I would say is in some, like if you look at a model like West Point or something, I think you get to pick if you want to be in or not. In Medallion, it's not. You put your money in, you get a representative share of every horse that we own. So if we own 12 horses and you own 5% of the fund, you own 5% of Medallion's interest in that horse. We've just found that works better for us. But I think every partnership is different. And in our model, what I would tell you is I encourage the communication. I encourage people to ask questions. If you have good ideas, I'm the first person to say, like, I don't have every good idea that there is. But in general, it's a manager led thing, and ultimately I have to make the decision in what's the best interest of every partner, not just one individual partner. And a lot of times it's the trainer that makes the final decision. Like the trainer is the one that's with the horse every day. I'm happy to come up with ideas, but the times I've tried to get creative and overrule the trainer, that basically never works. So a lot of decisions are trainer led with light encouragement. I'm just showing the whip. I haven't reared back and given him a tap yet.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
No.
All right.
That was well said.
Okay. Here's a question. Hello. I've gotten burnt on a couple of partnerships where one horse was oversubscribed by selling 150% of the horse. What can the industry do to better regulate partnerships so that the buyer doesn't face this again? Tough one.
I will say, I'll start this one. I mean, that was one of the things when Jack and I first got into this business, and I hate to say it, but it was a lesson learned. We had gotten burned, a little oversubscription problem there. But with us and what we do at Starlight, we're a lot like what Philip said, like when you come in for your percentage, it's a percentage of every horse. Very transparent. We don't mark up our horses at all. So what we pay at the sales ring is what you pay. What we do going forward is that we plan out 6 months of bills. What we have learned in the past with insurance. Sorry, that was I am so sorry. But we do 6 months of bills ahead and plan that way. And if anybody has a question about anything, we're happy to answer it because we truly don't have anything to hide. Our business model is based that since we have our money in as well, we get paid on the back end. So that to me makes more sense because we're incentivized to work just as hard to keep everything going.
Okay.
I would say you got to do your homework. Look for accredited, look for partnership, do your research, ask around, read about them because people talk. And if you're doing something that's shady, people are going to talk about it. So I would say that's a big thing is to try and do as much homework as you can.
Or I will say they'll say, sometimes if you hear that pause or something, the more people you talk to, and read on their websites.
Read, ask all the say I want to see. Yeah, do your due diligence. And I'm sorry that happened to whomever asked that question, and I'm afraid that happens quite a bit. And I wish there was a better way we could regulate it, but I think a big part is ask around and try to do a lot of homework.
Yeah, and I would say just advocate for yourself, and that doesn't even go just with partnerships. That goes with anything that you do in the horse business. Really, it's just advocate for yourself. Like I think if you've heard a common trend from all of us, it's that we encourage questions. Like I'm happy to answer questions, and if you start dealing with people that don't want to answer your questions, that's probably a major red flag. Like, but you're your best advocate, and even if you don't know a lot, like that's okay. Advocate and try to learn and deal with people that you think you can trust. But I think the biggest thing is just always advocate for yourself. And there's no question that somebody can't answer. Even if you ask me, like, why do you charge a monthly management fee? I'd say, well, we do this because it covers accounting costs and XYZ. And like, I'm happy to explain that. Why do you charge a commission? All those things. Why do you not mark them up? Why do you mark them up? You know, at the end of the day, I think what Lori will tell you and what everybody tells you, partnerships themselves are a business. So the thought that Lori and Jack have to go do all this hard work and there's no way for them to be financially incentivized to do that is just that's not realistic. What is appropriate and what really the whole juxta is, what do you deem as appropriate? And that's different for everybody. Like some people may say, hey, I don't like that Medallion charges $500 a month per horse, which is what we charge to the full partnership. And that covers accounting, my salary, it covers manager travel, all these things. But they may say, you know what, that's too much. I don't want to pay it. Well, that's okay. That's your right as an owner. And I think that's the biggest thing is you just have to figure all that stuff out and really advocate for your best interest.
And I'll add to that, on ownerview.com, under the ownership tab, there is a section for frequently asked questions that an owner can ask a racing syndicate as they're doing their research. So that's another area an owner can turn to even know what questions to ask, because you don't know what you don't know.
I think, I'll jump in real quick. I think people don't want to be blindsided, right, Gary? If you know what the costs are up front, it's when you're into it 2 months down the road and you get this cost add-on, this add-on, this add-on. If everybody tells you up front, I think people are fine with it.
Absolutely. And that's the whole point of OwnerView, is we want people to come into this industry with their eyes wide open. Next question, have the panelists found that there are trainers who really enjoy working with racing partnerships and syndicates, and others who focus solely on single or smaller partnerships?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think I'd said that earlier. You know, there's some trainers that really embrace this. They really do a very good job of communication. They really do a great job of welcoming multiple people into a barn. Then you have the traditional trainers that are sort of the old school model where they want to deal with one owner and one representative. They really don't want to give a lot of information pertaining to a workout or where a horse is being pointed to. So I think it's up to the syndicate manager or the syndicate owner to do his due diligence to figure out what is going to be a good fit for that particular syndicate and experience.
I think that's like the old saying of some, you know, there's a reason a lot of trainers work with horses and not people. And it's because they're great with horses and they're not great with people. And that's definitely, I mean, that's definitely true. What I would say is I think it is a trend. And I know some of the trainers that we've dealt with like 3 or 4 years ago, the shift that they've taken, you know, in the last few years has been pretty significant. But it's like Simon said earlier, with technology now, a lot of it is so easy. It's, you know, what I would tell every trainer is if you have to pay somebody on your staff, you have to go hire someone to tape a workout video. It is well worth it, because I'll just tell you from our perspective, like the trainers that send workout videos and give good communication, they just move right to the top of the list. And the ones that don't, they just get shuffled down, because it's our people want information. They are craving this ownership experience. And if a trainer won't give it to you, then I can't use that person. Like it's that simple.
Okay. Next question. Do most partnerships generally provide information at the onset of what will happen with the partnership horse upon retirement, breeding, sale, aftercare, and so on? So do you tell your investors at the onset what will happen to the horse after its racing career is over?
Yeah, I mean, we do. I mean, you know, those are your options. I mean, if the horse has an injury, it has to be retired, or if it's a claiming ranks, I mean, that's part of our information when people come in. We do have some partners that have come in without very much knowledge of the industry, and those are the questions we answer. And that's just, you know, we hope to always sell it privately, as you know, if it's a stallion prospect, or we hope that we have enough grade ones and twos that we have another home run with a filly in that way. But the real answer is that it's hard to get those level of horses all the time. So we try to do the best by the horse. And when it's time to move them along to another rank, you know, level of, we do.
Okay. We're going to pause for just a moment to thank the New York Thoroughbred Breeders, who's also a sponsor of today's panel. And I've got a bunch more questions that have come through. So if everyone can stay with us for a few more minutes, we'll get to some more questions. So let's go ahead and play the New York Thoroughbred Breeder video if we could.
An NYTV membership is your inside track to the ultimate New York Thoroughbred racing experience. Free race day entrance to Belmont, Saratoga, Aqueduct, and Finger Lakes. A liaison with NYS Breeding and Development Fund. A voice in Albany working with legislators to help support the New York breeding and racing industries, along with tons of member benefits, discounts on services and publications, educational programs, and so much more. Join today at nytbreeders.org/membership.
Okay, next questions. Please talk about when a partnership or a syndicate needs to register with the SEC versus when it's not required. Who'd like to jump in on that one? We might need somebody from Dean Dorton.
Yeah, I mean, I can give a pretty loose description, but basically what I would tell you is it's like, it's a lot of gray area with a lot of it, like because Medallion's affiliated with TaylorMade, we have to do everything like by the book because we can't afford to get audited and then we haven't done everything appropriately. So basically, to give a very short version, with every partnership, you have to file with the SEC unless you have an exemption. And within Medallion, the exemption that we have is we can only sell to accredited investors. And that is basically the pretty standard exemption that almost all partnerships use. There are other like more smaller partnerships that are family and friends that you don't have to do that. But if you're selling to outside investors or you're doing any sort of general solicitation, you have to have an exemption or else you have to go and basically do what My Racehorse does and you have to register and do all these steps. So for us, the way I would say get around it loosely, but we have an exemption and it's only to sell to accredited investors. My Racehorse does, they have what's called a Regulation A that allows them to sell to unaccredited investors, and they've gone through all these steps. That's a very simple, be much better off asking a securities attorney, which I've been in plenty of securities attorneys meetings, and I basically want to just ram my head into the wall every time I sit in those meetings. But that's a very simple thing, is that the bigger you are, the more above board you have to be on all that stuff. I think if you're smaller, like I know we've partnered with people in the past that it's more or less friends or family, and I know that they have, done something differently. But for us, we have an exemption. We have to independently verify that everyone's accredited, and that's the steps that we take.
Okay, so does every owner need to be licensed in every jurisdiction that the horses race in? So who'd like to take that one? Maybe Greg?
The answer is no, because we don't do that. We license the primary syndicate manager or the syndicate name, depending on the jurisdiction.
Okay.
However, for the perks of full ownership, we do explain how to be licensed, and if an individual wants to do that, we give their information and set them up to do that.
Okay.
Certain racetracks, if you own a certain percentage or less, you do not have to be licensed, which is helpful for a lot of our syndicates because you have a lot of partners that own a small piece and they'll let you get away with that. But there's also, we found a lawyer, it's a really complicated thing, but if you're going to partner with 4 people and each own a quarter, then I would say absolutely yes, all 4 people have to get licensed every time. But luckily there's a thing called the National Racing Compact, which once you're licensed with them, they can take care of for a fee. They'll get you licensed in every state. And so it makes it a lot easier than you trying to send fingerprints to each state. I know that the National Racing Compact is trying to do some new things to make it a little more easier and user friendly. Hopefully they'll get to an app and I don't know, I've just heard that they've been working on updating. So I know that's a big issue in this industry, but it's a pretty complicated question. So
I can't recommend the National Racing Compact highly enough. If you run in 2 states, it is worth paying
the fee.
So, if you own horses on your own, it is well worth the thing. It's literally a phone call and then they have you licensed. It's very simple.
Okay. So here's a question. I know there are different business models for different racing syndicates, but this question is about, once you buy into a racing syndicate, will there be additional costs for vet care, and other costs throughout the period of ownership?
I'll take that one, at least for Starlight and Star Ladies. Yes. So like I said, that, you know, you have the purchase price. So that gets you the horse. But then if there's vanning, there's training, there's vet bills. So what we've learned is that we've estimated a 6 month out for, you know, planning for the 2 years. So for every 6 months, those costs come in, you know, what management fees we have, that sort of thing. It's all built in, and everybody at their percentages build a piece of that. So just know that your investment in the horse, you will still have bills that come due for as long as that horse is owned.
Yeah. So for Medallion, we don't do any bills. Like we take in everybody's money. All bills are included. All purchase price are included. Commission is included. Everything's included. And we just send out a biannual P&L that shows, you know, we started with X. Here's exactly how the breakdown is. But again, it just goes back. Every partnership is different. Some may be 6 months. Some may be no expenses. Some may be for a year. You know, it comes into just, it's important to ask. And, you know, a lot of that I think comes back to like, how many partners do you have? How manageable is it from an accounting perspective? Everybody does it differently.
Okay, we've been going for about an hour and 20 minutes. So I'm going to wrap up here with one last question. Generally speaking, you know, how many people are usually involved in a partnership from the low end to the high end? And again, I know a lot of racing partnerships and syndicates are different, but you know, what's typical of a racing syndicate on the low end number of partners in a horse to the high end?
I know me personally, our low end would be 4 and we would cap it at 10.
4 to 10 people?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else?
We do it from 4 in the States. We do from 4 to maybe 20, but in Australia, Ireland, and France, we'll do up to 40 because it's a little bit different model over there. So
okay.
And with Starlight, we usually cap it about 10 to 11. But then when we've joined in with partnering with other syndicates, so there'll be more, but it won't be the Starlight portion of that.
Yeah. And I would say kind of the way Medallion does it is we currently have 22 investors. We do it a little more geographic. Like we have some parameters because we want to provide, you know, if we're in a grade 1 in New York, we want people to go. So we'll only take X number of people in New York. We'll only take X number. Like California, it's easy. If you want to get in a paddock, we can get you in. We do it kind of geographic because we have people all over the country. But that's just what's worked for us. You know, I would say probably the traditional is either 10 or 20, because if it's a one-off syndicate, they're either selling 10% shares or 5% shares would be the two most traditional models. But, you know, I think you kind of seen from everybody does it a little different.
All right, panelists. I think that wraps up our Q&A. I tell you what, I mean, you guys have just delivered a wealth of information to people out there. I want to thank you for your insight, each and every one of you, Anna, Lori, Philip, and Greg. Tremendous insight. The folks at home listening, we're lucky to have you on board today, and thanks for taking your time to do this. I want to thank our sponsors as well, particularly the New York Thoroughbred Breeders for sponsoring today's panel. But most of all, I want to thank our owners. As I mentioned, without owners and their investment in this industry and maybe potential investment in the future, the sport of horse racing probably doesn't exist. We greatly appreciate that you took the time to be with us online today. And hopefully you'll join us for next month's panel. That's panel number 4 of 10. It's going to be called Filling Your Racing Through the Claiming Ranks. And we hope you can join us on Tuesday, June 1st. Until then, be safe, stay healthy, and hopefully you enjoy the second leg of the Triple Crown on May 15th, the Preakness Stakes. Until then, thanks for joining us. So long, everybody.
thank you.